Dr. Amin is more than a friend. She became a sister in science diplomacy. We met in Trieste during what was the third edition of the science diplomacy course. That was an initiative of the World Academy of Sciences and the American Association for Advancement of Science, AAAS. And I remember, just like it was yesterday, Amal calling me. We stayed in the same hotel, and she called me and said, come here, sit down. I need to tell you something. And that's when she had like the vision of what is now a very, very successful program and network, that is the Women in Science Without Borders. So I used to say that Amal, she's a force of nature. She's a trailblazer. And if you Google her, you're going to find a lot of very, very interesting articles about her career in science. But I'm going to read, if it's okay, her very, very accomplished resume here. Amal is a professor of polymers and nanotechnology at the National Research Center in Egypt. She studied in and worked at and traveled to over 30 countries, including Germany, where she is now, USA, France, among others. She has distinguished scientific achievements, including publications, projects, teaching awards. She was co-founder and executive committee member of the Global and Egyptian Young Academies. She was president, co-founder, and coordinator of the Egyptian Society and Arab Network for Advanced Materials and Nanotechnology. She was at WAS, the World Academy of Science Young Affiliate, at WAS AAAS Science Diplomacy alumna, and member of TWAS and the TWAS Network for Young Researchers, and many other organizations. She actively participates in meetings of the World Economic Forum, Global Young Academy, UNESCO, etc. And she's the founding chair of the Women in Science Without Borders initiative, World Forum for Women in Science series, and the Youth Science Forum. Because she keeps creating new things to bring the world, the scientific world together. In December, she co-founded the Northern African Research and Innovation Management Association, NARIMA is the acronym, initiative. She's a founder for Science Diplomacy for the Future Initiative, executive committee member of Science in Exile. That is an amazing initiative to support colleague scientists that are displaced, that are refugees and at risk. In 2021, she received an Outstanding Women in Tech Award for Africa and the Award of Science by Women, provided by Women for Africa Foundation, awarded in Spain. In 2021, she was selected as in the Catalyst 2030 Global Initiative. So there are so many achievements, and we are going to share her resume because after all this time, there is so much more that she's done.
Yeah,
and
okay.
She's very interested in science communication, simplified science, increasing public awareness, innovation science, science education, among other things. Amal, you take my breath away. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this introduction and for the invitation. As you know that I love to speak to friends and to make friends, and it's the subject of my presentation today. Now I will resume my lecture. As I said, today I will talk about networking as a successful tool for science diplomacy, as I believe that networking between people is the way to have networking and global cooperation between governments or scientific societies and so on. Next, please. Next, okay. In this lecture, I will talk about my personal experiences in the movement of young academies and through Women in Science Without Borders and other experience. Next, please. Next, Maria. The first I have to say, like Christine Grenet definition, that science is truth and diplomacy is the willingness of nations to have respectful dialogue about the truth. So that big relation between science and diplomacy. Next, Maria. The history of science diplomacy, as I said to Maria before the lecture, I read that science diplomacy is all the action, but we have new definitions for science diplomacy. As example, the Royal Society began the science diplomacy actions long time ago, maybe in 18th century and so on. But recently, there are several definitions about science diplomacy. Like in January 2010, the Royal Society and the AAAS noted that science diplomacy refers to three types of activities. Science in diplomacy, that means global issues concerning to climate change and so on, with global concerns on global basis and so on. Diplomacy for science, getting things done for science. Science for diplomacy, that means science directly rule in affecting bilateral relations and bilateral cooperations between countries. Then recently, a new term appeared as science advice. It means cooperation between governments themselves, not only between scientific communities, but on the policymakers level. Next, please. And we have now INGSA, the global network about science advice worldwide. The background of science diplomacy, virtually as example Zika, or now Corona, COVID-19. It's a global concern, and the world, worldwide, whether developing or developed, have global concern about COVID-19. So that it's a global concern, needs cooperation and needs scientific relations and scientific cooperation worldwide. That's maybe one action can be used in highlighting the scientific relation and the good scientific relation, and then science diplomacy can work in this matter. Next, please. Also in science policy, many of issues like climate change, as example, pollution, sustainable fisheries, management of water resources, and so on, we need science diplomacy in these matters. And as you know, the Sustainable Development Goals, if we will see the Sustainable Development Goals, we will see that all of them need global cooperation, so that in the time of COVID-19, it was very obvious that science diplomacy is very active, and we need science diplomacy. We need scientific cooperation worldwide. Next, please. Also, we have to have develop the emerging perspectives with respect to South-South cooperation, North-South cooperation. As I said, in the era or in the time of pandemic, we see that we need each other. No one can live alone. No one can solve the problem alone. The problem happened in China, but it transferred worldwide. And now the vaccines came maybe from England, from US, and so on. But all we need these vaccines, so that we need diffusion of the knowledge. We need diffusion of science. We need good scientific relations and cooperation. I published about that in the World Economic Forum blogs, that we need active global cooperation, especially in scientific relations, and to make the information available and enabling the scientific cooperation and exchanging of the information. And I think the global leaders now convinced about that, even with respect to the medical matter and so on. Next, please. Next. Okay, here the course of AAAS TOAS Science Diplomacy Program, where I met Maria and other friends. Maybe you will have Almas with you at the next sessions and next lectures. For science diplomacy now, there are several programs according to the universities in US and UK and so on. because it's very important to enable scientists to know the other part of the game. The game consists now between science or scientists, industry, and the policymakers. And that's why I will talk later about Women in Science Without Borders. Now it's a component. The science now considered as one part of the triangle. The other triangles, the policymakers, the industry, and the media in the middle. So that for to us, they make this course for science diplomacy in Italy, and we attended, me and Maria and other colleagues, where we met the policymakers. We learn about the qualifications the scientists need to have these connections with the policymakers and the media and so on, because we have to learn as scientists how to communicate with the policymakers and the media and so on, because it's us, it's our responsibility toward this world to share in solving the problems as well. But also the policymakers should listen to the scientists. And I think the pandemic has great usefulness and benefit toward the scientists and the science, because they realized finally the importance of science. And also we have to learn that no country can do it alone, no country should want to do it alone. Next. As I said, there are several examples on science diplomacy, like health diplomacy, water diplomacy, agricultural diplomacy. And the simplest example is the Sustainable Development Goals. Because if we see the Sustainable Development Goals, we see something about health, something about water, energy, food, and all these items need scientific collaboration, global scientific collaboration, because nobody can do it alone. So that in brief, science diplomacy, it's a global cooperation, global scientific cooperation. And I think recently the rule of scientific collaborations and science diplomacy appears very well, especially after pandemic and COVID-19. Next, Maria. Climate Ocean Diplomacy, IEB. IEB is a big example for science diplomacy, because it's a collection of all scientific academies worldwide, and they make good collaboration between them in diffusing the information and the experiences, especially after COVID-19. Also, to us, is a big example for science diplomacy. Next, please, Maria. And as I said, sustainable development goals. All sustainable development goals need global cooperation. Nobody can do it alone. And if you hear that a Nobel Prize yesterday was awarded to the one of chaos theory, or the butterfly effect, that any single action in any part of the world will affect the other parts of the world. That's why I say science diplomacy is very effective. We have to cooperate together. Next, please. The second part, which I will talk about, and I think it's an example also for science diplomacy, it's the Young Academies, or the movement of Young Academies. The movement of Young Academies began long time ago by the German Young Academy in 2000. And then afterward, the Sudan established its young academy, and then that was, and the SESCO thought about, and the UNESCO as well thought about, to establish a global association for young scientists and so on. And afterward, the IEB, the association of all young academies, science academies worldwide, sought to invite the young scientists worldwide from 40 countries and so. And I was among them, to meet at Summer Davos in China, to establish a global academy for young scientists, to discuss and to diffuse experiences between them. Uh, Next, please. Next, Maria. In Summer Davos in 2008 in China, those young scientists who were selected worldwide gathered in China, and they said that as young scientists from all five continents, we are passionate about science and we are passionate about science contributing to a better world. We wish to enhance the contribution that we can make to science and that science can make to society. That was the beginning of new era, that the new age of establishing more young academies along the world, and considering the young scientists or distinguished young scientists as the future global leaders. Next, please. There are general aims for young academies, generally empowering young scientists and empowering also the women in science, and empowering the young scientists to share deeply in the policy making in their countries and on the global level, also to strengthen the international relations between countries and strengthen the relation between science and society, and may share in science and technology policies, and enhancing the environment as well of young scientists. As example, we made a strong survey and study about the conditions of young scientists in different parts of the world, may help the policymakers to enhance the conditions and reverse the brain drain to bring in developing countries. Also, we need to encourage the cooperation between South-South and North-South, and also to empower the young scientists to be global leader and global experts, and diffusion also of the experiences and knowledge worldwide. And as I said, after pandemic, I think pandemic is very beneficial for the scientific society because it strengthens the phenomena that we need to collaborate and we need to make strong relations between us. Next, please. Here also other aims for young academies promoting excellence and leadership skills. Next. And equal opportunities for scientific cooperations worldwide in multidisciplinary approaches, encouraging networking. And one of the best aims of young academies encouraging networking. Now, Global Young Academy includes about 83 countries, also increasing public awareness of science. Also, it's a very important aim of young academies to increasing the public awareness of science, whether on the national levels or on the global levels. Maybe sharing in enhancing the curricula of science, or raising the public awareness toward any subject like COVID-19, or like birth control, or like any subject we need, so that it's one of our aims to relate science and society, science with society, or to enhance the curricula of science in the countries like developing countries or the poor countries, and so on. Next. Next, Maria. It's my picture here where science wrote about us, about the movement of young academies as a promising initiative for the future and for raising global leader, future global leader could enhance the status of science worldwide, and also to share strongly in enhancing their societies for the sake of sustainable development by empowering the young and the mid-career scientists, encouraging international relations and networking, sharing in development plans, and increasing public awareness, and encouraging and promoting excellence, and sharing in enhancing research environment for scientists, and reverse brain gain to brain drain. brain drain to brain gain. Next, please. That can lead us to the say of Mark Zuckerberg that our society needs more heroes who are scientists, researchers, and engineers. We need to celebrate and reward the people who cure diseases, expand our understanding of humanity, and work to improve people's lives. Next. And also, like Stephen Hawking, scientists have become the bearers of the torch of discovery in our quest for knowledge, so that it's our responsibility. I usually say that scientists look like messengers or prophets or something like that, that they have big message they have to convey to the whole world, and they have to work outside promotions and outside their own self, that they have to enhance the societies around them. Next, please. Through young academies, usually we have three main groups like science and society, science education, interdisciplinary research for global regional challenges and problems, supporting early career researchers. Next, please. Usually, I took advantage and say that the movement of young academies look like what happened with respect to Louis Pasteur when he had a problem with silk industry, and he transferred to the location of the problem, and he contacted the public and educated the public about the problem and transferred the knowledge, and then built the Institute of Pasteur, so that he made some diffusion of the experience between him and the public and so on. He made some kind of sustainability around him, and it's the same situation of the young academies, that we need global changers, but real global changers, not only by talk, but by deeds. Next, please. Afterward, I shared in establishing Egyptian Young Academy, which has the same aims of Global Young Academy, especially in empowering young scientists and young researchers to be future leaders, especially if we know that Egypt includes about 60% of its population as youth, so that it's a very young country. Also, ES shares in increasing public awareness in several subjects, and we made survey about enhancing the conditions of work environment to reverse brain drain to brain gain. Also, shared in some science and diplomacy policy advices, and encouraging global international relations with international organizations representing Egypt abroad. Next, please. Also, we made very interesting activity called the Science Days. Science Days, it's a very good action to enhance the public awareness, where we went to the far governorates and rural areas, and talked to the public and the university students about the top and cutting edge research, and we found a very good reception from the public, and it was very good proof that if you make an action, you will receive the reward. Next, please. Some pictures from these events where we went to the rural areas, and we had good action from the media and from the people and from the students themselves. As I said, it's a good action. It was a good action, and received very well. Next, please. Next, Maria. That will lead me to what said by Albert Einstein, that education is not the learning of facts but the training of mind to think. And all our efforts through Global Young Academy or Egyptian Young Academy, or all our efforts we did to enhance the sense of the public towards science. As Spring Rene said, when kids look up to great scientists, the way they do to great musicians and actors, civilization will jump to the next level. Next, please. The third subject, which I will talk about, it's Women in Science Without Borders, WISWAP. It's my new activity which Maria talked about. That the first one who I talked about Women in Science Without Borders was Maria. When we were in Italy during AAAS course of science diplomacy, I talked to her about new idea or new initiative that called Women in Science Without Borders. I told her I want to make something new to collect industry, policymakers, and scientists, whether young or seniors, together to speak together to try to solve the pending problems away from any consideration. That's why it's called Without Borders. Uh, Maybe we can say, like Cassie Kelvin said, that girls, why girls? Why women? Because girls are the force of nature, really. Girls are one of the most powerful forces for change in the world. When their rights are recognized, their needs are met, and their voices are heard, they drive positive change in their families, their communities, and the world. That's why I think to establish women in science, we are not for women only, we are for women and men. But I consider women in science at first because we have to pay attention that we have to be one. It's a shame that we are in 2021 and we still say women in science, men in science. We have to be one. Scientist. I am proud to be a scientist, not women in science, not men in science. We have to solve these problems. We have to collaborate together. We have to talk to each other more. We have to contact the others more. We have to network with each other more, whether women or men. So that it was founded in 2017, directly after AAAS course. And then I invited Maria and other friends to the first meeting in Egypt. It was held and organized by the Egyptian Academy of Sciences, and it was for men and women. The first meeting was multidisciplinary, and now all the meetings are multidisciplinary. No difference between women and men, all, and all generations as well. And it transferred to community building initiative to serve and develop societies and the globe with science. Next, please. Next, Maria. There are still some statements in the same slide. Here is the picture of Martin Luther the Jr. That I have a dream, really. Behind the Women in Science Without Borders, I had a dream. Next, there are statements, more statements. To develop my dreams, to develop society with science, to make science available for all, to connect people and the world with science, because science is happiness. Really, I want to prove that science is happiness. Science is a big way and big gate for happiness and welfare of nations. It's not a burden, it's a happiness. Next, please. Why we swap the normal information? Maybe all of us know about it, that women, when choose to study any subject in the university, most of them choose subjects like literature, business, and so on. Also, in their percentage worldwide, Now the percentage about 33 in the new report of UNESCO, but the percent still low, and in different percentages worldwide. In the Arab regions, it's good percentages, but we still need more. In Europe, in Brazil, and Latin America, you need more to increase the percentages more, and so on. So that overall, we have women in science distributed about 33%, and it's still lower than we need to reach 50-50, because we contribute to more in scientific communities, more than 33. But we need to increase in some areas in favor of the percentages, more percentages of women in science, especially in academia and in higher levels of academia. Next, please. And also, as I said, with respect to subjects, we will find that in some subjects there are low number of women in these subjects, like math or physics or chemistry, in favor that in business, in administration, and so on, more women studying these subjects, so that we have to encourage women to study more physics, math, chemistry, and so on. Next. Also, there is some theory called the leaky pipeline. That means that at the undergraduate level, we will find that 50-50 between males and females. And afterward, by time, the percent decreases by time. Then, if we will reach it to the higher academia level, we will find in some countries about 6% or 10% of the initial percent which began the education, and it's very low percentages. And we have to encourage the females not only on the undergraduate level but afterward, because as I said, there is some kind of death gap. This gap, it's between the graduation and the PhD level. With this gap, we have to encourage females at this stage to complete their academic life or something like that. And if they complete PhD, they need encouragement also to complete till professorship, because at these stages they can stop at any stage. That's why in academia we have only 6% at the top academic level. Next, please. Also, with respect to the number of awards of prestigious prizes like Nobel and so on, low number of Nobel laureates from women. This year, no women at all. Next, please. So that we have to encourage women also in prestigious prizes and so on. With achievements, with publications, we will find low number of first author publications in patents, also 28%, in citations, in all everything's. We will find low contribution of women in science. Next, please. So that now it's a big problem and we need all hands on deck, and that means clearing hurdles for women and girls as they navigate careers in science and technology, engineering and math. Next, please. That's why was the idea of WISWAP, or Women in Science Without Borders, that no matter between women and men, and we have to collaborate with each other for the sake of sustainable development. Next, please. As I said, we have different activities. All our activities are multidisciplinary. Usually, we have annual event called World Forum for Women in Science. It includes training courses to train the researchers on different topics, new topics like science diplomacy, science communication, science leadership, and conference, the main conference usually about all subjects and all areas like engineering, math, and the students competition, Science for Youth. It's a side event to encourage the people, the young people, to go in science or to complete their career in science. Next, please. As I said, we have always multidisciplinary events in biology, in math, in science, in agriculture, medicine, and so on. Next, please. And also student activities in different sustainable development fields. Next, Maria. Next. It's the first conference in Egypt. We have now several events. The first one in Egypt. Next, please. These are pictures to show how much the interaction between students and seniors and policymakers and so on. Next, please. Next. And from the beginning, we have good support from the policymakers, industry, and the big firms and organizations. Next, Maria, because they are a collection of pictures about women in science without borders events and the interactions from them. And the second one was in South Africa, the third one was in Egypt. And for the third one, we had good collaboration with Johnson and Johnson. Or for the first one, Wellcome Trust, and for the Ministry and Elsevier, UNESCO. This one, the third one in Egypt, in British University. Next. The fourth one was in Brazil, where I met Juliana. And the fourth was about youth. We had one event last March about youth in science. It was called Youth Science Forum. Next, please. We always have the percentage of 30% for males, 70% for females, but it was good because we have the name Women in Science, so that it's good that 30% of men could collaborate or contribute because they think that it's for women. Otherwise, I usually explain that it's for all. Next. Next, Maria. Next. Next. Usually, when we allow young people to collaborate, it's always in form of teams and competitions because we want to encourage them to be a scientist and so on. So that usually they are forming teams. The teams must be mixture between males and females. Next, please, Maria. Next, next. Next. We had good response between all the press releases inside Egypt and outside Egypt in all countries where we held our conferences. Like in Brazil, we had a good response from press, also in South Africa. And finally, I was mentioned in Women in Science Stories, Success Stories, and Inspiring Stories. It's the book of Nazak. Nazak, it's the network of scientific academies in Africa. Also, I was mentioned in the book of Success Stories for Young Scientists for South African Academy of Science. Next, please. These are more publications about women in science. Next, please. Next, Maria. Now, Women in Science Without Borders distributes over 67 countries. We have no conditions for membership. Only you can go inside the Google form. I usually share this Google form on our website, and usually you can fill it and you will be invited to all our events. It's a voluntary work. Next, please. That's why maybe because it's a voluntary work, that's why it's distributing very fast. There are several talents required for science diplomats, future scientists, like communication skills, negotiation skills, and others. Next, please. I have some tips for successful careers for women or men that you have to have your face about yourself at first, and you have to convince yourself by your targets and focus on your targets and have big dreams, but with work very hard and think out of box. Next, please. And always have role model and be optimist and humbled and enjoy what you do and be accomplished also for with everyday to-do list. Next. And always learning, training, no matter your age. Steps of the road, it's a fast information about me that I was inspired firstly by Marie Curie as my role model, so that I studied chemistry. I went to Faculty of Science. Then I decided against all stereotypes to get my PhD from outside, from Germany. And I got hard conditions in Germany, but I finished my PhD in very short time, about 1.5 years. But I decided to return back again to Egypt with family. I had problems always in Germany, by the way, because I insisted to accompany my family and my little daughter and so on, and it was very hard to be accomplished in presence of family, in presence of hard work as a chemist, and so on. But I decided to return back to write my thesis in Egypt. And unfortunately, the day decided to return back in Egypt, it was the accident of the 11th of September, and it was very terrible situation. And I found everything's turned upside down. That's why I decided to become change maker by science, because science, it was a logic tool to change other than or away from politics and so on. Next, please. So that I began to work inside and outside Egypt. I founded at first the Egyptian, so that you have to begin at first from inside. I founded at first the Egyptian Society for Nanotechnology, then the Arab Society for Nanotechnology. Then I became to as young athlete. Next, please. Then I had several activities to, as Maria said, to attend World Economic Forum, World Science Forum, to be young affiliate, to attend TWAS UNESCO, and then to be nominated to global events and to New York Academy of Sciences. And finally, I was awarded Distinguished Women in Tech in Africa, and then I became member in Science in Exile and several initiatives. And I was nominated for ORCID board of directors, and it was big achievement. It's big achievement for women scientists from the Middle East. Next, please. Next. These are pictures from different places I worked in. Next, please. Next. Next. Different publications about science diplomacy and about my activities. Next, please. Next, Maria. And also, I shared in several women in science activities worldwide in mentoring programs and so on. Next. In conclusion, empowerment will be more effective with collaboration and networking. We have to collaborate and network with each other. We have to go outside of boxes, outside of all our narrow areas. We have to be together. Together, we will be stronger. Next. Finally, I have to say, like my role model said, life is not easy for any of us, but what of that? We must have perseverance and, above all, confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this thing must be attained. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Thanks, Maria.